we must connect the resources part in a very clear way with the previous activity part, because as we said, this part describes the infrastructure of Netflix. Now let's try to understand the fundamental resources for the operation of Netflix. One is the strength of the brand. It must be something recognizable. It has to be something that comes to mind. For this reason, a lot of Netflix's effort is in being relevant in the market. Also, from the point of view of Get, that's why we need to think about how we can come up with it. We also must have a part in which we say to the producers and the filmmakers, because when we have privileged relationships with them, it is much easier to create content that is beautiful and interesting for our target. So we consider how important this part is. It's not just about creating content, it's about making sure it's among the best on the market. Try to see if we have any awards, if there are any industry awards that can also be useful to convince people who may be a little hesitant. In this part, Netflix considers its branding as one of the most important parts. It is clear that if the value proposition is to have content 24 hours a day and to segment this type of people very well, the application and the site must be there and must be done very well. This is not a part of activity, but of resources. So one of the key resources is to try to think about the technological part. Here we also talk about the employee part, because Netflix is also famous for the culture of the company. And so you also see how, from the point of view of human resources, even for technology platforms, this can be very important. On Tesla's side, we are talking about highly industrial sector. So the battery system, for example, must work perfectly, because if we are not able to recharge these cars, and even if we spend perhaps $60,000, $70,000, we must be able to recharge them, because otherwise we cannot use them. So also consider Tesla's difficulty from a maintenance standpoint. These resources have to be there. There has to be a system in which, for example, the individual car cools down very quickly, have knowledge of how this sector works, because if we have people within the company who are experts, they can hardly create such complicated structures. So consider that it's not just a part of having, say, a manufacturing plant, but having people who are able to take this kind of knowledge to the next level. So consider that as much as it's a technological part, people are pretty much always there. Even in this case, when we talk about the automation part, there is also a human side and not only software. Carefully consider which resources are key to you as well, because even in the case of Tesla, human resources are very important. In the case of Facebook, having as many people as possible on Facebook is important, because it clearly gives an idea of the size of the company as well. If Facebook talks to investors at the end of the year, it will immediately tell how many users there are on the platform, because if there aren't, Facebook doesn't exist. It can also be studied from the point of view of the patents made to make sure that everything is so fast and so also in line with what we expect. The study of internal algorithms is also essential to understand how to manage a whole part of user data. If we are a small brand and we want to sell on Facebook, but Facebook can't tell us how many people there are who are in line with us, Facebook's sales proposition will be very weak. So consider this part as well, because in resources, there is often also the data part, precisely because they are increasingly in demand by companies as well. Consider that for the Facebook brand itself, when something negative happens, it can be a big problem. So that's why Facebook carefully tries to remove content that may be not in line with the people who are present on the site. Consider all the parts of content that are created by Facebook. So it is essential to evaluate the brand part, especially for companies that are already established. In the case of Facebook, it is clear that the staff is very important, because all those who deal with the creation of such a complex system must work very well together. Always evaluate, also in a future perspective, what are the fundamental resources that you need now and which will serve you in the near future.